back now with our investigation into human trafficking in the illicit marijuana industry. Before tonight, it was hard to tell who is responsible. Now, Jacob Soboroff reports that a sophisticated international money laundering partnership may be to blame.
Have you ever thought that a seemingly ordinary karaoke bar in Chinatown could be the epicenter of a global drug and human trafficking ring? At 5:12 a.m. on October 25, 2025, hundreds of federal agents stormed Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago, and New York, uncovering a fentanyl pipeline from China through Mexico, concealed right in the heart of these cities. Millions of deadly pills, countless people held captive, and stolen military secrets, all in one night. Could your own neighborhood be the next target? Watch now to reveal the chilling reality. I believe it's time to take decisive action against the drug cartels, and that effort should begin under Donald Trump's leadership. This is a Chinese operation, with Mexican cartels acting as the junior partners. As most people now know, the precursor chemicals for fentanyl are sourced from China. Recent research reveals how Mexican cartels are mass-producing fentanyl using these chemicals from China and then flooding the United States with the deadly pills. Across the United States, fentanyl is often mixed into counterfeit pills that resemble legitimate medications like oxycodone and other opioids, then smuggled across the border, often from Mexico, where the precursors are sourced from China. On October 25, 2025, at 5:12 a.m. in East Los Angeles, federal agents raided 3 businesses: a karaoke bar, a massage parlor, and a restaurant, while also searching 2 nearby apartments, finding 36 people crammed inside. What started as a routine inspection quickly escalated into a major investigation, revealing a smuggling network operating in plain sight amid one of the deadliest and most terrifying drug crises in U.S. history. What happens next will leave you stunned. At 5:12 a.m., East Los Angeles was still cloaked in darkness. Only the faint orange glow illuminated the Chinatown nightlife strip: a karaoke bar, a massage parlor, a noodle shop, and a small casino. Behind them, an aging apartment building stood unnoticed. No one knew this block was mere seconds away from becoming the epicenter of a federal raid. The silence was abruptly shattered as unmarked trucks boxed in the street. ICE, DHS, and FBI agents flooded the area. Armor-clad, rifles raised, night vision goggles glowing, they moved in. A breaching hammer slammed through the karaoke bar's door, and the facade collapsed. Inside, rooms were cramped with bunk beds. 36 people packed into just 350 square feet. Suitcases were zip-tied. Passports locked away in a metal box, and beneath the counter where liquor should have been, bricks of heroin and fentanyl pills stamped with Chinese factory codes. We need to be prepared to make it clear. If you don't stop sending fentanyl precursors to Mexico and through our ports of entry, we will hit you with severe economic penalties. That's the real leverage. We're not going to invade China because they're flooding our country with fentanyl, but we can raise tariffs and impose a massive economic cost. In that first room alone, over 100 pounds of fentanyl were found, enough to harm 500,000 people. To the neighbors, this block seemed like just another nightlife spot. But beneath the neon lights, the music, and the laughter, a human trafficking and narcotics pipeline had been running in plain sight, and the raid was only beginning. By dawn, the block had transformed from a neighborhood into something far more sinister: an exploitation factory. The people packed into bunk beds weren't just undocumented workers. Many had been kidnapped, trafficked from Fujian and Guangdong, passed through Malaysia or Ecuador, handed off to smugglers in Mexico, and forced across the border. Their wages were taken, their movements tracked by GPS, passports locked in metal boxes. Threats had replaced locks, and forms of control ensured compliance. Women were rotated and exploited, while children were hidden completely, their identities wiped away. They were controlled, confined, and coerced. These were men and women subjected to brutal treatment in horrific conditions. And the controllers demanded money. Every storefront was a gear and a ruthless, unyielding machine. The karaoke bar funneled cash and kept meticulous transport records. The massage parlor maintained labor rosters, rotating workers, controlling them, and replacing them when necessary. The backroom casino laundered dirty money into chips, then converted them back into clean currency. The restaurant served as the logistical epicenter where crates labeled soy sauce and frozen squid concealed drug shipments. Inside these crates, foil-wrapped heroin bricks and fentanyl powder stamped with factory codes. Shipments arrived on schedule, sometimes multiple times a week. The scale of the operation was catastrophic. These chemicals had the potential to devastate entire cities. Profits from this enterprise fueled the same human trafficking network. Names surfaced from seized phones and ledgers, revealing the full scope of the operation. Yolin Ye, whose LLC leased safe houses and warehouses. Dejeuner, who managed refrigerated shipping containers moving between Phoenix, Houston, and Chicago. Money flowed through Nevada shell companies, from cash to crypto exchanges and into underground Chinese banking systems. This wasn't just organized crime, it was a self-sustaining cartel economy, one that trafficked, kidnapped, controlled, harmed, and laundered money with ruthless precision. Don't scroll, don't skip. What comes next reveals how this network operated state to state, undetected for years. Once the first shipment codes were cracked, federal command centers recognized a nationwide pattern. A hidden corridor ran from East LA to Las Vegas, Houston, Chicago, and Flushing. These weren't just businesses, they were distribution hubs, and so the raids expanded. A digital operations map lit up, showing 14 targets across 4 states. Each icon represented a warehouse, club, or housing cluster linked to the Ye-de-Genier paper trail. At 4:03 a.m., while half the country slept, federal convoys deployed simultaneously across 6 states. UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters roared through the night with armored vehicles trailing behind. Over 630 agents moved in, coordinating their actions in synchronized waves. ICE, HSI, DEA, and local tactical units were ready for containment. The first strike in Houston hit the Golden Bay Foods LLC warehouse. Infrared scans revealed heat signatures behind a sealed wall. The breaching charge detonated and the wall collapsed, exposing steel shelves stacked with 2.1 million fentanyl pills disguised as candy, enough to supply 4 major cities. Hired mercenaries. Agents returned fire, grenades exploded, and the shootout raged for 14 minutes before finally ending. In Chicago, agents breached an apartment above a dim sum shop, discovering 26 trafficked migrants locked behind a steel gate. The controllers vanished just minutes after the Los Angeles raid, confirming real-time monitoring. Do you realize that a seemingly ordinary karaoke bar or massage parlor near your home could be hiding an international fentanyl and human trafficking ring? But the most violent clash unfolded in Flushing, Queens. There, beneath the neon karaoke signs, the VIP room served as a command center. Runners, brokers, and transport coordinators were the link between Mexico and American cities. When agents stormed the stairs, they were met with makeshift barricades, overturned tables, chains bolted to the floor, and bodies shoulder to shoulder holding the line. Hydraulic cutters and riot shields were needed to break through. I witnessed it firsthand, because what followed wasn't just crime, it was geopolitics. By dawn, the seized quantities were still being counted, but the real shock didn't come from the drugs, cash, or forced labor ledgers. It came from the laptop. The forensics team worked through the morning, copying hard drives and uploading the data to federal evidence servers. What they uncovered transformed the case from organized crime to national security. The documents weren't just payroll lists or smuggling schedules. They included export registries, embargoed shipping codes, and procurement requests written in technical English, the kind used in aerospace manufacturing. One spreadsheet detailed payments for radiation-hardened microchips, the exact type used in satellites, missile guidance systems, and high-resolution surveillance platforms. The listed chip models were subject to federal export controls. Yet there they were in a seafood warehouse office in Los Angeles. Another folder contained encrypted messaging logs between the LLC controlled by Ye and a consulting firm registered in Shenzhen. Embedded within the text were references to performance specifications, delivery timelines, and test fit compliance for military environments. The implications were staggering. The same shell company facilitating the movement of workers in fentanyl was also trafficking restricted U.S. technology overseas. Intelligence analysts quickly identified the pattern. This wasn't just smuggling. It resembled a covert procurement network tied to foreign intelligence agencies. Not the dramatic movie-style espionage, but the quieter, more insidious kind. Ordinary-looking businesses were being used to harvest data, components, and leverage. The political fallout was immediate. By noon, statements had begun pouring out of Beijing, accusing Washington of collective punishment and racial targeting. The Chinese consulate spokesperson demanded the release of wrongly detained citizens and condemned the criminalization of legitimate business activities. But U.S. federal officials responded with a different, sharper message for national television. This wasn't about race, it was about trafficking networks, forced labor pipelines, and foreign interference operating within American cities. Off the microphone, the tone was even more direct. National security briefings labeled the network as a dual threat. Economically, it laundered millions of dollars each month. Criminally, it fueled fentanyl pipelines across states. Strategically, it could send restricted U.S. technology overseas. Congress members called for hearings. Governors began reviewing state licensing vulnerabilities. Defense analysts issued warnings about supply chain infiltration. The idea emerged that what appeared to be ordinary restaurants, clubs, or neighborhood grocery stores were in fact logistical arms of a foreign intelligence operation. The public narrative had shifted. What had once been seen as a story of undocumented workers, fake IDs, and underground clubs was now about who built this network, who protected it, and how deeply it had infiltrated America's critical systems. For the first time, the raids were no longer viewed as just immigration enforcement. They were seen as the front line in a geopolitical battle unfolding in neighborhoods, loading docks, and kitchen warehouses. And while Washington debated policy and diplomacy, another crisis unfolded on the ground. One measured not in politics, but in fear. Don't look away. The next chapter isn't about crime, it's about trust and the loss of it. Comment if you understand. When the headlines exploded, they didn't just hit newsrooms, they struck neighborhoods. What had once been seen as the familiar, vibrant Chinatown economy, restaurants, late-night bars, after-hours clubs, corner groceries, suddenly appeared in a different light. The public didn't see the complexity. They saw raids and stopped showing up. Within 2 weeks, business owners across Los Angeles' Chinese districts reported revenue drops of 40 to 60%. Restaurants that had weathered recessions, pandemics, and rising rents now faced empty dining rooms at lunch. Delivery drivers waited for orders that never came. A community built on constant foot traffic suddenly fell silent. Some businesses had no ties to the network, but fear didn't ask for clarification. Workers began locking doors earlier. Elders avoided evening markets, and salon chairs sat empty. Entire blocks grew quieter, like a neighborhood holding its breath. Meanwhile, immigration advocates raised alarms, arguing that many of those detained weren't cartel members, but workers caught in cycles of debt, deception, and dependency. Some even held legal visas. Others were undocumented, but most weren't criminals. They were laborers who had become invisible. Yet the federal narrative remained steadfast. We're not targeting the community. We're dismantling criminal pipelines tied to trafficking, drugs, and national security threats. Off the microphone, however, something more complex was unfolding. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a public statement accusing the U.S. of racism and weaponizing law enforcement. State media called the raids a political charade, diplomatic pressure mounted with consular visits increasing, and high-level calls between Washington and Beijing growing increasingly tense. At the same time, U.S. prosecutors unsealed parallel indictments in Boston, Houston, and New York, unrelated to the Los Angeles arrest, but strikingly similar in structure. Exporting AI-capable microchips to companies linked to Chinese state labs, smuggling satellite-grade semiconductor wafers from California tech suppliers, stealing medical database research from U.S. hospital systems. The message was undeniable. The trafficking ring exposed in Los Angeles wasn't an isolated incident. It was just one thread in a vast national web. The public now faced a painful paradox. How do you go after drug dealers, money launderers, and covert technology brokers without destroying small businesses, families, and communities that had no involvement in the crime? Some responded by organizing community relief funds, others called for congressional oversight, and many stayed silent, fearing that speaking out could mean they were being watched. Finally, the neighborhood lights flickered back on. But something had shifted. The trust that once made these streets feel like a city within a city had fractured. Every unmarked van now drew wary stares. Every closed door sparked whispers. And somewhere, beyond the restaurants, warehouses, and raids, the rest of the network was still watching, adapting, waiting. Because when one market falls, another hesitates, but the machine rarely stops on its own. The question now was, who would move first? The community trying to rebuild or the network trying to reclaim what it lost? When the dust settled, what remained wasn't just a crime scene, it was a stark reminder of how fragile trust is and how essential vigilance will always be. The raids in Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago, and Queens weren't aimed at a single group. They were about dismantling shadow systems that thrived on silence, fear, and indifference. For years, these networks operated behind familiar facades: restaurants, clubs, small businesses, blending seamlessly into the daily rhythm of life. But when federal task forces moved in, they uncovered something far deeper than drugs or fraud. They revealed a machine of exploitation where human lives were reduced to transactions, identities erased, and freedom sold for profit. And that's why this story matters. Because every time law enforcement breaks through a hidden door behind sealed walls or into company ledgers, they're not just carrying out an operation. They're revealing the raw truth of a system built on the suffering of those who had nowhere else to turn. They're reclaiming the spaces where corruption hides, standing between organized evil and everyday citizens who never see it coming. Behind every helmet, every shield, every unmarked vehicle rolling into the dawn of East Los Angeles are men and women who choose to step into danger so others don't have to. They don't do it for the headlines. They do it because the system relies on people willing to hold the line when no one else will. For every block, like East LA, there are others waiting to be exposed. For every network dismantled, another is already adapted. But as long as the brave stand watch, the darkness will not move unchallenged. This isn't just about crime, it's about courage. It's about the people who refuse to look away. From those dawn raids, the greatest lesson for all of us is that trust can be exploited in the most familiar places. A karaoke bar, massage parlor, or restaurant can be a front for drug pipelines, human trafficking, and the theft of national technology. Indifference and lack of vigilance are the cracks through which crime seeps in. Observe, ask questions, and report any suspicious activity in your community. Protecting security isn't just the job of authorities, it begins with every citizen. Vigilance today is the key to safeguarding tomorrow. The raids are over, but the shadow networks are still adapting, waiting for a chance to return. From East Los Angeles to Flushing, Queens, the truth has been exposed. Fentanyl, human trafficking, military technology, all hidden right among us. Will you choose silence or action? Comment your city name now so we can check if this pipeline is operating near you. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part. Vigilance today is the shield for tomorrow.